Good evening. I'd like to call this board meeting for February 15, 2018 for Benicia Unified School District to order. Before we actually begin with the pledge, I am going to ask everybody to let's take a moment of silence for our board meeting this evening. We'd like to recognize two employees this past year that we've lost. Ann Rogers, who is a retired HR tech, and also Diane Wassman, who was a primary teacher at Robert Semple Elementary School. Additionally, I would like to add today, and I've gotten permission to do that, is I'd like to add to our moment of silence our thoughts and wishes. I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional with them. Parkland High School in Florida, they have lost 17 students and a staff member at this point, and I'd like to also put them in our prayers. So if we could do that now, I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Now if everybody will please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to request an approval of the agenda as written, please, if I can have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Okay, Dr. Young, would you please help us with the highlights for this evening?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. So this is a fun part of the board meeting where we like to start it off by highlighting a program that's taking place throughout the district, and we try to have a variety of people and programs and students that we feature. And this evening, I'd like to welcome the principal of Liberty High School to the podium, Mr. Pless, who's going to talk about the art program at Liberty High School. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having us. So we've had the lucky opportunity of having an arts program this year at Liberty High School that's really focused on being connected to the community. So we worked really closely with Arts Benicia, and they've actually sent us some artists and residents who have come to work with our students after school. Students do receive credit for coming after school to work on it. And today when I came in there, I think we had 12 students, and out of our population, which is only 70, that's a huge chunk of students who are really taking part in it, and it's really gained popularity as we've moved through it. I'd like to welcome Celeste, who's from Arts Benicia. She's going to talk a little about her role that she's played in that, and then we do have a couple of pictures I wanted to show you about the kids and the artists and the field trips they've been able to take.
Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really pleased. On behalf of Arts Benicia's board, staff, and the community of artists, we're thrilled to be working with Benicia Unified School District and Liberty High. We're really excited. We, at Arts Benicia, launched a teen arts program a couple years ago, and one of our goals was to really expand it, to have an opportunity to work with the students and to do things like going on field trips, mentoring, of course, making art, and learning from this incredible bounty of wonderful professional artists we have here in Benicia and also in the region. So the artists are thrilled to be working. They are offering really quality opportunities for the students, working with materials. We amped up the ceramic program by getting the kiln working again at Liberty High, and so they're doing that. They're working in all kinds of mediums. So if you want to show the slides, I can just give a little narrative to the slides. This is a couple of our visiting artists that we're working this fall. We launched this after-school art program in the fall. Suzanne Long up at the top, she's been doing this ceramic for 2 sessions. They've been really exciting and working with them. Sharon Payne Bolton, who has a studio down at the Arsenal, and she's been working with the students with assemblage and collage. And that image before where she was with them in the Arts Benicia gallery there with that large, to the side here you can see a portion of this huge ceramic piece with the artist Mark Messenger, who was talking to the students there. Next slide. This is some of the wonderful artists, the student artists working hard at work, and I can't tell you how exciting it is. I mean, they really are engaged. We're really thrilled to be part of getting them excited. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but we all know the impact of arts education and how so many leaders in the world look to the creativity component in education for students to really look at them launching their careers in whatever field that may be. Here's some of the student art they've made, sculpting, and then here's one of the, it's okay. That's okay. I know I don't want to take too much time. And here's one of the fun things we also get to do is to with Zachary. His real support has been important to this, and of course Kathleen Sauter, to really get the students out in the field and to see the studios and to go to different galleries. The top is Obtanium Works in Vallejo with Shannon O'Hare, and they do a lot of the fun kind of electric cars, and we're going to have them working with the students later this semester. They went also to an incredible exhibition that was put on called On Fire, interestingly timing, at the Temple Art Lofts that was part of the Visions of the Wild. And they also went to San Francisco MoMA to see the Rauschenberg exhibit. And the next artist going to be working with them, Jeff Snell, is very much influenced by Rauschenberg, so it's perfect timing. Some of the other, I'll quickly tell you, some of the other field trips we've had been to students, the studios of Mike Kendall, Sharon Payne Bolton, Clayton Bailey, anybody knows, he's a very established artist in Crockett. They've been also to the Jen Tuff Gallery and of course to Arts Benicia a few times to view different exhibitions and to meet with curators and artists. Did you want to? Good.
And then also, because we always want to recognize that student voice is more important. You know, I come in and see what they're doing and hear about the field trips, but I don't get to go on them as much. So we invited Jasmine here today, one of our students who has been one of our most regular attenders of our Arts Club. And Jasmine, you want to just come up and talk a little about Arts Club with you?
I really appreciate the art club at Liberty High for not only giving me and a bunch of other Liberty students the opportunity to gain, our credits, but for giving us a place to connect with people that we wouldn't usually, think that we'd connect with at school, and giving us a place to express ourselves, because I never knew how in touch I could be with art before I was given the opportunities for our club, like the ceramics and just all this stuff that they provide for us. And I really like the field trips that we go on. It's really eye-opening, and it's just really cool to see the different aspects of art and the different artists. And yeah, I really appreciate this program.
So thank you to the board for giving us a chance to kind of show off some of the stuff we do. If you ever happen to be by on Thursday afternoon and you want to come by and see, we're in the art portable that's right on the back side of this parking lot. And you're always welcome to join us on any of the field trips. We're happy to have you come with us. So let us know. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, and now we're going to move on to our student reports.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name's Alex Torres, and I'll be speaking about some past events at the Benicia High School. So last Thursday, February 8th, we had our open house / elective fair / 8th grade parent night / AP night. And we had a good turnout. We sold some spirit wear, and our incoming freshmen are ready to be spirited with their spirit wear. Yes, we sold a lot of that. Yes, and then our girls soccer won their division yesterday, which is pretty exciting to hear. Bring another title to Benicia High School. And band just returned last week from New Orleans. I don't really know how to say it. They had fun. They had 2 parades. They performed at Martin Luther King Charter High School and in Jackson Square. And they also got to go to some workshops at Tulane University. And that's that.
All right. My name is Christian Chavez, and I'll be speaking on the upcoming events here at Benicia High School. So our spring sports have just begun, so be sure to watch out for our baseball, track, badminton, softball, and boys golf and boys tennis teams this season. It'll be pretty exciting. And then this Friday is our debate night, where our debate team will be hosting a fundraiser as they head to their state qualifiers. And the event will even have Assemblyman Timothy Grayson as the audience, I guess. And then next Friday is our upcoming improv show. And we have just started selling our tickets for our Blacklight dance to be held on March 9th. So that should be pretty exciting. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Janessa Bartholomew from Liberty High School. Liberty High School has welcomed 20 new students to the campus since January. It has been great seeing the new students making contributes to our school. Well, to them it's new, sorry. 4 seniors have completed all of their coursework since January, which now brings us to 6 completed seniors. Since last week, that's Liberty High School, hosted our spring blood drive. We had 23 people sign up and 12 people successfully donated blood. Props to them, they got t-shirts today. In January, Liberty participated in a week of kindness with spirits dress up. We had kindness tweets that we posted in the hallway, and students completed a kindness checklist that had a whole bunch of kind things they could do around the school, which actually had a great impact that I saw. Last week, a group of students, including me, went to SF MoMA, and I honestly really enjoyed it. I loved seeing the 3D art, all the pencil working from like hecka long ago, and it was really interesting. Not hecka long ago, sorry. The basketball team actually has doubled in size this month, and their games have really been close, but they're doing good. I really appreciate them. Our golf team is practicing after school on Tuesdays, and they actually seem to be doing pretty good. A golf tournament is planned in April, actually. In April. 3 students competed in Poetry Out Loud. Jasmine was selected to move on to the state level of the competition. And Girls State, Emma Jensen was selected to participate for Girls State. And that's actually really exciting. So congratulations to both of you.
All right, so thank you very much and congratulations. And 6 students ready to graduate. How exciting is that news? Awesome. Dr. Young.
So just a few comments from me, just, getting back to that, the terrible tragedy in Florida and how awful that was. And it's happened too many times in our country over the course of the year. I just wanted to say that I got a call yesterday with the Chief Eric Upson, and we had a lengthy conversation, and we're going to get together tomorrow with him and the city manager and to talk about our readiness and our training. And I bring that up because the partnership between the school district and the police department is outstanding, and I feel like it's a good close resource for us as we always strive to keep our schools safe. So we'll be having that meeting tomorrow on ongoing trainings for staff. A couple of other items. We had the Professional Development Day on Tuesday, and this was a terrific day. I talked about it at the last board meeting, where it was this nice partnership between members on the District Curriculum Council, members on PAR, working with Curriculum Council, and Stephanie Rice, our coordinator of curriculum instruction, did a lot of really good work partnering with folks to have this day where staff, the presentations were put on by staff, and you had a menu of choices that you could select from, and it covered a range of topics in math and science and technology. And speaking of art, there's a teacher over there who's terrific. His name is Dean Gore, and he had a presentation with integrating art into your curriculum, and it's a program that he talked about called Project Zero from Harvard University about how do you integrate art into the instruction. So it was a good day. It was good. We got a lot of positive feedback from folks, and we'll pitch out a survey to staff, get feedback, and then use that to design the program those days going into next year. I'd like to point out that our senior Madeline Bayer is a semifinalist for the U.S. Presidential Scholarship. Big achievement. And she is one of 600 in the nation. So she's among a select group. And she's also a National Merit Scholarship recipient. So excellent work on her part. We have a number of athletes that are being assigned to schools locally. Next time I come, I think I'll bring their names so I can click them off. And the last one, I wanted to point out that I thought it was a good assembly at the middle school. Last week we had a gentleman come, his name is Scott Bakovich. And the assembly that I watched, I thought it was very engaging. As a young guy, he's been doing this throughout the country for about 12 years. And the focus of his presentation it's on culture and climate and reaching out to your fellow students to recognize them, to make them feel more comfortable, to make them feel supported. So he was funny, he had some good stories, and hopefully it has some lasting effect that it was over. The kids internalize that and go on and put it into practice. So that's it from me, Superintendent.
Anybody from the board have anything they'd like to report?
This weekend, I attended the 5th of the Masters in Governance training program, which basically is a training program for governance, school board governance. And I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to do it, to learn about how governance works and about school finance and lots of other really important things. And they even had this little graduation ceremony at the end where they played pomp and circumstance and gave us diplomas and pins and lanyards. And they even put this slideshow together from pictures they took during the training. Anyway, so it was pretty funny. And also just to put a shout out to anyone interested in doing any legislative advocacy, that I plan to go, along with, I know President Ferrucci is planning to go as well, to on the 13th of March to do legislative advocacy for adequate funding for schools. And just to encourage anyone who has any interest in putting any energy to political activism to encourage that and invite people to come along.
Okay, well, I've got a couple of really quick things. First of all, I attended the open house at the high school the other night. I was really excited and pleased to see the number of 8th grade students and their parents that were there that night and actually engaging and asking questions. And I didn't get to see the spirit we're on, but now I think I need a replay just so I can catch that. That was really great to see. And then I got to get into some classes and walk around and chat with some people. So it's always such a great night in our schools. We are amazing people at our schools, and it's just a wonderful opportunity to showcase that. So I want to say thank you. To my colleagues, a couple of quick reminders is that March 5th, we'll celebrate. CSBA Region 3 will be having a training for all of the board members in Region 3, and it's really an opportunity to hone our skills on how to work with our congressmen and our assemblymen so that we can in fact move forward. You may recall that at our last meeting we signed a resolution. I don't recall the number, but it was a CSBA resolution requesting that they bring the local control funding based number up to the average amount of student spending that would enhance districts. It would bring us something approximately $2,000 a student more into each district. So the idea is to hone our skills so that we become very effective, because on March 13th it's Legislative Action Day in Sacramento, and we will be meeting with all of our local assemblymen and congressmen, and that's really going to be the message we're going to carry, is that costs are rising, and we need to be reflective in the costs that we're getting from a state that has the 6th largest economy in the world, and yet they pay we rank 41 in the nation for what we put towards student education. So it's about getting that more in line and becoming more real. So I invite any of you to join us. I'm glad Celeste's coming, so I'm not going alone, but I wouldn't mind if the team came as well. So just want to put those 2 things out there. So okay, so next we're going to move into comments from the public, from members of the public. So members of the public may address the board on any item within the board's jurisdiction. Cards which may be completed requesting to address the board are available at the back table and may be submitted to the board secretary at this meeting. The governing board allows speakers to speak on agendized and not agendized items under public comment. Comments are limited to no more than 3 minutes per speaker. By law, no action may be taken on any item raised during the public comment periods, and matters may be referred to staff for placement on a future agenda of a governing board. Are there any speaker requests, Mrs. Jensen? Okay, so hearing none, I am going to move on. Any members in the public want to? No one is? Yes. You need to come up to the podium, and you'll need to state your name.
Cool. There's my voice. Awesome. Give me 1 second. This doesn't count towards my time, right? Okay, just wanted to make sure. Alright, cool. Alright, so my name is Wasim Viderikith. I'm a senior at Benicia High School. Currently there's a work to rule in place for the teachers. I think this is regarding another contract dispute with the union. I don't really know how it works. I was here last year speaking, and I'm speaking again. It feels timely. So yeah. One of the primary reasons why my parents moved to Benicia was because of the education system here. It was either living here or in South Central LA. So this choice seemed pretty clear. In my 11.5 years of being in the school district, I'm proud to say the teachers have shaped me into someone that I've never really expected to become. In 7th grade, my English teacher, Mrs. Smith, would regularly hand out creative writing assignments. I'd take that opportunity to create worlds that were as limitless as my imagination could go. And she would encourage me to go and continue to write. I've applied to now 4 schools for film and television production, and I hope to continue to write for the screen. A year later in 8th grade, I found myself failing history, a topic I've found zero interest in. I have major projects due in a day, and I would half-assedly write about why cotton gins were so important. Fast forward 3 years later, where I'd endure Mr. Coyne's AP European History and American Studies classes, I became increasingly interested in history. I learned how to write like a robot about how our nation is built atop systemic racism and sexism, and I learned how these continue to plague our society presently. I learned about Mahatma Gandhi's peaceful protests, where the dude literally starved himself to save his country. I started out as an introverted, failing student, and Coyne helped me turn into a more outspoken and I'd say successful student. There isn't a doubt in my mind that everyone in this room knows about the amazing work our teachers do for us, dedicating their time after school to help us on assignments we don't get, and even writing letters of rec for our top schools. Which is really why it sucks that after a year, after all these negotiations went through, I'm back in the same exact spot, arguing the same exact thing to almost the same exact people. I've said this last year, and I'll say it for as long as that plaque is up there. It states, we want all students to achieve their highest potential in an engaging, inspiring, and challenging learning environment. If you want students here in Benicia to achieve their highest potential, please consider the raise for all the hard work our teachers put in for us. Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the public? I'm going to move on to the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered by the board to be routine, and will be approved by the board in one motion. There will be no discussion on these items unless members of the board, staff, or public request specific items to be pulled and discussed. Are there any comments from?
I'm abstaining from the vote.
Okay.
I move that we approve the consent calendar as presented.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And one sustained, right? Okay, thank you.
You gotta do 11.3.
Actually, what will happen is we'll just do the whole consent calendar with the roll,
Okay,
unless you want to pull it.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
11.3 is for obsolete.
obsolete books.
So can I use the same motion that we just used? Is that all right? Okay, perfect. President Ferrucci?
Yes.
Trustee Monette? Yes. Trustee Morgan?
Except for 11.2, yes.
Trustee Wing?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on to discussion items, which are the first readings of the additional board policies, BP 1325, advertising promotion, BP 31 budget, BP 3115.7, firearms on school grounds, AR 3517, inspection of facilities, BP 4119, BP 4119.22, and 4319.41 professional standards, AR 4140 through 4240 and 4340, which are complaints, BP 42 classified personnel, and BP 6154 homework and makeup. And just to clarify for the audience, your ARs are administrative regulation, BP means board policy. Okay, do we have any discussion on these? Anyone have any questions? Okay, yes.
4119, the requirement to post a code of conduct on our website.
Okay, thank you. Okay, being it's just a discussion item, I am moving on to 12.2, which is Measure S, the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee Annual Report. Mr. Rahill, would you like to introduce this?
Yeah, we have tonight the Measure S, our Citizens Bond Oversight Committee. As required, they provide an annual report each year, and we have the chairman of the Bond Oversight Committee, Scott Burford, who will provide our annual report.
All right, thank you, Tim, for the introduction, and good evening, everybody, and thank you for inviting me. So, yes, I am the chairman of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee for Measure S, and just for the benefit of everybody, what is the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee and why does it exist? So, most of you know that in 2014, voters passed Measure S for $49 million in bond revenue funds to improve our schools. So, we're in the process of spending that money and improving the schools, and everybody's seen the results so far. So, required by law in part of the measure was the formation of this Citizens Oversight Committee. So I'm the chairman of the committee, but I certainly don't do it alone. I'm joined by Steve McClure, Pat Lopez, Todd Blaitler, David Sells, and Ron Ahrens. And Ron is actually here with us tonight in the back row. I'd like to personally thank Ron. Ooh, sorry about that. I'd like to thank Ron for asking the best questions of anybody in our committee. So he keeps me on my toes and everybody. So thank you, Ron. All right, so now to the serious part. Our job is to inform the public concerning the expenditure of Measure S bond revenues. So informing the public and maintaining trust among voters is certainly an important thing, not only as far as the current measure implementation is concerned, but also for future bond measures, which might carry a similar purpose years from now when needed. I'd also like to thank the district's chief bond officer, Tim Rahill, and bond director, Roxanne Egan. But Tim and Roxanne, they both do a fantastic job. They're great to work with. They answer our many questions, and they hang in there like champs because sometimes we get a little cranky. we've found that spending $49 million is actually pretty tough, and you don't get as much as you think you might. So they do a wonderful job keeping everything completely documented as far as what's going on. They make our job easy, so thank you. Also, I'd like to thank our superintendent, Dr. Charles Young. Dr. Young always makes time in his day to join our meetings and share his updates and his enthusiasm over the bond project, so thank you. So here's the part I was brought here for tonight, the legal part, the part we've all been waiting for. Basically, I have to report whether or not they're doing their job correctly, right? That's my job. So on behalf of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, I am pleased to report that for the 2016-2017 fiscal year, ending on June 30th, 2017, the Benicia Unified School District has spent Measure S bond proceeds per the bond project list contained in the ballot measure and is therefore in compliance with the requirements of California Constitution Article 13A, Section 1B, subsection 3. Good job. All right, so while I'm here, I'd like to take just a few moments to update and summarize our proceedings for the last fiscal year. We meet quarterly, and our meetings for the year were on October 25th, 2016, January 31st, April 25th, and July 25th of 2017. So at these meetings, we meet to review the bond project updates. We receive and file the bond expenditure lists. And as I mentioned earlier, with Ron's help, we ask a lot of questions. For the 2016-2017 fiscal year, we received and filed bond expenditure lists totaling $10,288,639.49. So most of the funds during this period were spent on the Benicia High School Stadium project. During this period, $8.2 million were spent on the stadium project. Approximately $170,000 of bond funds were spent on technology and infrastructure upgrades, things like clocks, bells, PA systems, surveillance systems, and phones. $90,000 was spent on the Benicia Middle School modernization design, and the middle school's fire alarm upgrades totaled $585,000. Fire alarm upgrades at Benicia High School totaled $748,000. We know from yesterday they work great. Other notable expenses include $148,000 in project management expenses, $219,000 to issue the final bonds for the program, and finally, electrical and other miscellaneous upgrades totaled $128,000. So after spending all this money in the past fiscal year, we're left with $33 million in Measure S Series A funds that were remaining on June 30th, 2017 to be spent on current and future Measure S bond projects and to be reviewed by our committee at our meetings during the 2017-2018 fiscal year. We're actually in the middle of that right now. On August 17th, 2016, the groundbreaking ceremony was held, that was 2017. The groundbreaking ceremony was held for the BHS Stadium project. Well, I don't think anyone could have predicted the scale of the rainy season that would soon take hostage of the construction schedule, and the project took a lot longer than anticipated to complete. However, on September 14th of 2017, our committee, along with the board, administrators, partners with the City of Benicia, and many citizens attended the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the BHS Stadium track and field project. Well, I think there was a great feeling of relief all around since this project had encountered so many unforeseen obstacles during its development. Hopefully, this beautiful stadium will become an important resource for the Benicia community. And lastly, I just want to thank the board members for your support of Measure S and for supporting the children of our community. I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I have a request for a comment from Michelle O'Leary.
I'm a little nervous, so bear with me. So I'm just coming because I read the article in the Benicia Herald, and I have an opinion about it, I guess. So in the Herald, it talked about and I'm just going to read through it. This is another approved project is improvements to the Benicia High Performing Arts Building, which Egan said is part of the district's efforts to apply for a career technical education grant for the building. If the grant's awarded, then the district will be required to match up to a maximum of $3 million in local funding. If the grant is not awarded, then a minimum amount of $400,000 will be allocated to the PAB. So my issue is that the grant is tied in with Measure S, because I don't feel that those two things should be connected. One of the reasons is I've done my own research into the grant process, and one is because it's CTE tied. So I understand that the buildings, sorry, I have to see close up and far away. The buildings behind the Performing Arts Building, where the drama building is, and that, well, that can be fixed, and you can call it CTE, and that will all go under dance because she's the only certified CTE teacher. But the Performing Arts Building, from what I understand, is a multi-use building. So in my research, I looked at the California Department of Education page, and there's a frequently asked question, and number 19 says, will funding for multi-purpose rooms, computer labs, or theaters be approved? And the answer is, funds may only be granted if the primary purpose of the grant application is directly focused and uniquely related to a CTE-specific industry sector program. Advisory committee approval must reinforce that aspect to the application, and general purpose auditoriums, multi-purpose rooms, general purpose labs, etc. are not CTE specific training programs and will not be funded. So when I read that, based on the information that I have, that means great if the grant is passed, then those classrooms will be refurbished. However, the PAB, Performing Arts Building itself, will not be able to be upgraded. So my question to everybody, and you know, I'm a newbie to this whole thing. My daughter just got involved last year, and my son, and so I'm not by far any sort of expert on what needs to be done, whether electrical or safety issues, earthquake safe, all of that. So I've gone and I've looked around, and I would ask all of you that if you haven't ever really sat in the PAB and looked and seen the wires and asked yourself some questions and what could we do and what needs to be done and is it safe, I would suggest that you do that and ask those questions. And then also, just lastly, on Friday, this Friday, we have the Assembly Member Tim Grayson's going to come, and he's going to speak. And we bring speakers, families, students, and community members into that Performing Arts Building all year. Can I just quick finish? It's like 3 sentences. The building for some is the first time they've ever been on our campus. It was the first time I ever brought my kids on campus. We have amazing performances that these students and teachers make do with the situation that they're currently dealing with. And isn't it time to stop finding ways to not get the work done that is needed, and let's just do one project? I'm sure it's itemized. If we could just do one thing instead of the whole big picture, I feel like we look at the big picture for the PAB. Let's redo the whole entire thing. Let's just get something done, like just one item to fix it and get the ball rolling. And if SOPA needs to come together to increase funds, I'll do whatever I possibly can. But if we could just allocate the funds, take the grant out of it, and do something. Thank you.
Oh, Roxanne Eganup, our bond director.
I don't know. What we had planned on doing tonight was to have Lee Pollard, he's our architect for HY, to come and give updates on the middle school. Later, after that, we were going to come back and kind of do an overview of bond projects, essentially past, present, and future. And part of that discussion, I had planned to speak to some of the things she was talking about. So I don't know if you want me to bring that one item up right now and just give some information, or just wait and do it all together at the end.
I think it's okay if you do it at the end.
Okay. So I'd like to introduce Lee Pollard. He is our architect for the Benicia Middle School modernization, and he's going to share with you the updates in our progress.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. So let's see if I've been given instructions on this. Let's see if I can do it correctly. So I have about 30 slides, and that would normally take a long time. So I'm going to try to go through this quickly. Most of you have seen this presentation or a good part of it. And so basically, I'm just going to give you an update as to where we are in the design of the middle school project and the elements that are within that and kind of where we're going. So it works. I gotta just be careful and not do it too far. Don't go so fast. It's just a little bump. Okay, so we presented to you before the original plan for our work at the middle school, including work out in all the quad spaces that we have there, and you have all seen this. So let me do. Come on. What happens here? Hold it towards me. What am I pointing at the wrong thing? Oops. There we go. Actually, I think I should be pointing at your computer there. So in January, we had a meeting with the staff and presented this presentation that I'm about to give to you, and it was really well received. But at the very end of the meeting, after all the teachers began to break up, your drama teacher comes up to me and says, "Well, I've got some thoughts about what you're doing with the drama classroom." And she launches into this and has all these ideas and thoughts about what would be most effective for her. And I listened to all this and I thought about it for a few seconds. I said, "You're right." And somebody pointed out to me that her name is Kathy Wright. And I was like, oh. But her comment and her thought is she's located in the classroom up there in Building B next to the library. And she felt that bringing her classroom out onto the basketball courts out there was a mistake because of noise during the day and separating her from her existing operation. So we thought about that, and I talked with Roxanne and the administration here, and decided to go back to the group again, the site committee, to look at that idea as a change to what we had presented to them. And so I'm going to get to that in just a minute, but I wanted to kind of step first through what we're doing on the interior of there we go. I'm going to get used to this yet, don't worry. The interiors of the buildings, because sometimes when I start talking about this stuff, I get really excited about both what we could do with that drama classroom and what we can do on the exterior of the building. And I forget to remind everybody that most of what we're doing in terms of upgrades in the educational environment is actually happening inside the building. And that's just because I get excited about other things. We are planning on doing upgrades to the library. Libraries in schools today are 21st century places. They're not just stacks of books anymore. We're planning on adding some group learning spaces, update the look, add some more wireless capability, a lounge area for the kids to work in addition to the stacks area, and remodeling that space. We're also looking at working around at the classrooms around it to open up with skylights and demountable partitions so that there's more flexible learning environments in those spaces. I'm trying this here and it's not. Yes, if you here, I'll let you do it. Next slide, please. Thank you. And then throughout every classroom, we're going to go in and look at trying to do some fix up, some painting, working on some more whiteboard space because there shouldn't be such thing as a front of classroom. There should be spaces throughout the classrooms that have opportunities for kids to use the whiteboard, more technology in terms of classroom TVs, and general upgrades that would include furniture, and the furniture thing is going through an entire committee process here at the district. Next slide, next thing. And so these are some images of other classrooms that are just brightened up. And if you go through the classrooms at BMS now, they're kind of dull, and the idea is to bring it into a more exciting, student-friendly space. Next, please. Now let me go back to the drama classroom. This is Building B with the library, and then if you can click the button again here. This area that's highlighted, oops, too fast. This area that's highlighted in here is the area that we're talking about turning into a drama classroom. One of the rooms right now, the room on the upper part is Kathy Wright's classroom currently. And so we're talking about taking over 2 classroom spaces for her program. Next, please. Now it's mad. Well, if you just, yeah. use the little right-hand clicker there. I mean, the right-hand button. There we go. That clicked twice, unfortunately. There we go. So what we're talking about doing is turning that 2-classroom space into a black box theater, opening it up, creating a space for performance, space for seating, and giving it a little pizzazz so that there's a place for the kids that's exciting and is still a classroom. Next slide, next click, please. Okay. One of the things we'll have to do when we do this is the red indicates soundproofing that we're going to have to put next to adjacent classrooms and also next to Talktown. We also have in yellow, we're going to add some windows so that there's some views to the exterior. Click again, please. Views to the exterior, which should show. They're not showing up there. Okay, well, go. Yeah, all right, go on. So one of the things also she was talking about doing is that she takes her kids and breaks them up into groups in order to give they practice one part of the play over here, another part of the play over here, and there's just not it's too noisy to do it in the classroom. So she wanted outdoor space to do this. Click, and so what we have is we've set this up so that we can have outside within the design various spaces for the kids to practice. Click again, so that's 1, that's 2. Click again, that's 3, and if you can click again, all of those can be visualized from our strategic placement of the windows so that the kids are not out there all alone. These also are all within a space, and I'm going to get to this in a second, of a new fence line that we're going to put out front so that they're not out into the public zone. They still remain in the private within the school zone. And click again, please. The other thing she wanted was she does a lot of performances, and she brings parents in, like an evening performance, and she likes it right up there near the front of the school. So this gives us an opportunity to bring the parents in and have them go straight into the drama classroom for a performance without them having to wander all the way through the school. All of this gives her what she felt was a much better solution, and the cost of this is about half of what we were thinking about spending for a brand new drama classroom. So this turned out to be a really good idea in terms of providing what she was looking for. We also, though, lose that drama as an extra teaching space, so we're proposing, where we're putting the modular classrooms on the northwest corner of the site, we're proposing doing 3 classrooms there instead of just 2 to make up for that lost teaching space. Next, please. So now I'm going to kind of go through really quickly, I hope, the design of the exterior elements on the campus. First, you can see at the very bottom of this screen there, we're planning on putting a fence with some color in there and some recessed seating areas for kids to wait outside for parent pickup, but also to basically fence off the campus and the ability for kids to use the front of those buildings for circulation from the public zone. And that's really a safety and security issue. You mentioned the incident there in Florida. Part of good design is making sure that you have your secure campus with only one point of entry, and that's what we're doing with this solution. Next, please. At the front of the school, that gives us various places for kids to sit and work outside. It also we have the large gate for there, but we also have a small gate, and the intention is that in the morning when the kids are all coming in, they can have a single gate and everybody can flow in, but then once the kids are there, they can close those 2 gates, and public and parents can only get into the school by going through the office itself. And so they would have to go around through the office and out and into the school, providing a more safe and secure environment within that design. Next slide, please. Along the front of the school, we are looking at putting some new materials to make it look better and more inviting, so it's not quite so much of a gray place. We're also looking at putting some sail shade structures. You can see the blue one in there to give kids a shaded, careful place to wait for parents. It also, the sails is our nod to the Vikings of the school, and kind of trying to have kind of the sails on that. Next slide, please. Here's another image of what that front would look like with the sails, your flag in front, and the look of the front of the school. Next, please. As we move into the school, we're looking at taking a lot of the surfaces within there and trying to upgrade them so it's much nicer. And then as we're doing that, creating spaces where kids can gather for lunch or sit outside of classrooms in passing periods, or actually have outdoor learning areas. Next slide, please. We have gone through the entire campus and developed a design for all the surfaces within there, adding color in various places and cleaning up the campus as we go through. One of the things I've been reminded to tell you is that these colors that we have are our proposed colors, and that they will have to go through a process of getting buy-in with both the school and you people here. And so we'll try to adjust them. There's some feelings that some of them are a little bright, though I like the idea of brightening the place up and making it much nicer. Next slide, please. This is kind of the effect that will have. This is the hallway between the C wing and the E wing that is kind of both, it's dark, and it because there's a lot of kids, they end up walking out into the dirt and that sort of stuff. So we would expand the sidewalk, put a green wall along the building, and then we're going to add some skylights along that walkway to lighten it up and make it a much better place for the kids. Next, please. This is elevation images of the two sides of that. Next, please. So the next part of this is that we are also trying to stay on a budget, and we have actually carefully gone through the entire campus and looked at where we're putting the improvements to the surfaces and where we're not. So for example, the F wing, which is over against the apartment or complex there to the west, we're not doing anything on the fence side of that. So we're not wasting money on stuff that people don't see. We're just trying to put our money and our effort into areas people do see. Next, please. And this is the walkway between, kind of adjacent to the gymnasium space there. Next. We have also been working with our landscape architect to deal with the ground surface and not just the walls. We have a the wave-like pattern going through there outside of classrooms, and especially this new building. We're talking about putting some outdoor learning areas with benches so kids can go outside and enjoy that, and also work on stuff out there, and the teachers will then have the ability to see what they're doing. Next, please. That will have I think, a wonderful effect about lightening that space up, which is pretty gray and dingy now. And by adding this stuff, we give a lot more feeling to the space. Next. That area leads into the space, the West Courtyard, and the space next to Tech Town. And we're going to go in there and add seating bollards and stuff, with drinking fountains, so that the kids have more places to work. And we're just going to do this throughout the campus. Drinking fountain would also include a bottle filler, because that's become something that's very important these days. Next, please. This is the area where the big redwood trees are, and we're calling it the Grove. They're right inside the entry. One of the problems with that area is there's a lot of bark and redwood headers out there, and the kids ignore them and step right over them and track that stuff through the school. So we're going to turn that into paved areas for the kids as well. And I'm almost done here. Next, please. And this is the area between the gym and the multipurpose room. One of the problems with that particular area is it's just wide open. If it's cold, the winds just blow through. And if it's hot, it's too hot for the kids to sit out there. So we're looking at the idea of adding some more of these sail structures out there and trying to provide tables and stuff so that it becomes an inviting area for the kids to go. This also, since it's right next to the food service, will be a great place for them to eat lunch. Next, please. Next slide. These are images of the types of products we're proposing putting out there. Nice benches and tables, the sail structures, some seat walls and some seating areas, and some upgraded fencing instead of the chain link fence that looks really institutional. We're trying to make it look more like a really nice shopping mall where kids would really want to hang out. Next, please. I'm going to finish by talking about phasing. The first phase will be doing the modular classrooms up there in the upper left-hand corner and the area that's circled around that. We are aiming to finish the drawings for those later this spring so that this can be constructed during the fall. They're over there in the corner, so they shouldn't impact classes very much. Right now, the modular building industry is so busy, the economy is so hot, that even if you wanted to do it during the summer, you couldn't because there's just no capacity available for it. Next slide, please. The next phase is to do the modernization of the library, the classrooms, and the exterior space. Our intention is to have this ready for the summer of 2019. We can't do it all during a summer because if we tried to do that, we'd be putting like $600,000 or $700,000 of work in place every week during the summer, and that's just not something that's practical for a contractor. So it's going to have to either start in the spring or kind of drift off into the fall. I'm still working with Roxanne on developing the exact schedule for that. And next slide. The last piece of this would be to build an addition onto the kitchen, which is inadequate, and provide a lunch shelter for the kids so that you have a place for them to have an outdoor space. And I believe that's it. Yes. So if you have any questions.
Well, I have to say, because I have come to a lot of the meetings, but I love the idea of the change with the drama room. I think we need to thank Kathy. That was a brilliant suggestion.
It was. I wish I could take credit for it, but it's
No,
all her.
I get it. But I mean, I was going through this, once we got our board stuff, and I thought how great that they would have access to the front of the school to get in and out safely without have to going through the entire campus when she does her evening thing. So I loved it. I thought it was such a great move. So thank you for giving them the opportunity to do that.
It was all her, really.
Yeah, she did good.
Yes, she did.
Just one really tactical question. So,
Yes, sir.
In terms of the fiscal expenditures of keeping the new design up, like in the sales, we're a pretty windy town. How durable those are, and what's their lifespan? And we'll have to keep replacing them every couple of years, or
the sales that we would be using are a product that is DSA pre-approved, and the fabric that is in these are not. It's more of a plastic than it is a real fabric stuff. Their lifespan is of the sail itself is about 20 years. So the answer is yes, it would have to be replaced in about 20 years. The structure and all can be the same, but then you'd have to then go out and buy fabric to replace it. And of course, like anything else, after 15 years, it's going to begin to fade a little bit. And
I just thinking about my backyard and darn umbrella blowing away, and
yeah. But they are DSA pre-approved, and they're set up for both wind and earthquake loads, so they should.
And again, just to be overly involved in the weeds, but we've got also all those geese out there, and so just think through that. What that means when they're doing what they do on top of the sails.
Yeah, that they are washable. But somebody's gonna have to get out there with a hose. We had actually originally thought about the idea of putting trellises out there.
Yeah.
And then after thinking about that, that would just give an opportunity for the birds to sit on those and the bird poop to land on the kids or the ground. So the advantage of having both that and the lunch shelter for the kids, having it as a solid material, even though from the air it might not look so cool, it would actually keep that stuff off the kids.
Yeah, that'd be great. But I'm just thinking the cost of maintaining it. So as you factor all that in.
Somebody said it was disgusting. Okay, is that it? All right,
Thank you.
Thank you, Lee.
If I can, I'm just going to just briefly mention two of the items in the packet tonight, and then I think Ms. Egan's going to come up and talk about current and future projects. But basically, we bring you the quarterly bond packet that we provide to the Citizens Oversight Committee as well. So in your packet is the agenda and minutes from the last quarterly meeting. Also, the expenditure list is there. This last quarter, the district spent $1,851,000 on bond projects, and so that's recorded as our quarterly expenditures for the second quarter in our fiscal year. And with that, there's also a separate attachment where Ms. Egan, if you wanted to talk them through current and future projects.
So I put together this page, and it essentially has on the first page a column to the left that is it reflects what I'm going to call past. So it's projects that are built. The column to the right is what I'm calling present for easy terminology, and then the second page has projects that I'm considering future or that we're here to discuss adding to the list for present on the second page. I thought I would start out by celebrating the projects that we've completed. I know you guys have heard it a lot, but maybe just to review it and remind us what we've done. So completed bond projects to date, the technology infrastructure upgrades at all schools, the phone systems at all schools, the playground upgrades at the elementary schools, the Benicia Middle School roof, the Mary Farmer Elementary School roof, the Benicia High School stadium field bleachers, the Benicia High School exterior painting, security surveillance at all schools, the Benicia Middle School fire alarm replacement, the Benicia High School fire alarm replacement, and the Benicia High School stadium. So the second list to your right that we're calling in process, these are projects that were previously identified for funding allocation and are in various degrees of the planning stage or in line to begin the planning depending on when their projected construction start date is. So I was just going to go through this list and kind of say this is where we see this happening and where we're at with it. The modernization, middle school modernization. Lee just gave us all your dates that you need for that, so I think we're pretty up to date on that. Next in line behind that, we have the Mary Farmer and the Robert Semple Elementary School fire alarm replacements. Both of those are at DSA presently, with construction estimated for summer 2018. Matthew Turner Elementary School fire alarm. Matthew Turner has the newest of the old fire alarm systems, so it'll be the last one to be upgraded, and that's projected for summer of 2020. Summer of 2019, we'll have the fire alarms of Joe Henderson and Liberty High School upgraded, or replaced is a more proper term. The next item in line there is miscellaneous infrastructure upgrades. We have a budget for $300,000 for that item. I don't have exact scope fully defined for it. As we have stuff come up and as we get it more defined, we'll share it back with you. We've got the high school gym floor, and then alternative education improvements. They also have a budget earmarked of $300,000. One item that has been identified within that to have completed is replacement of the windows at Liberty High School. They're all in need, and so that would leave some monies left. That scope hasn't been fully identified, but there's other locations that need work, and we'll continue to define that. The next item is the Performing Arts Building. So I was just gonna back up and give some overview on the process with that. So we've talked about before that we submitted for a PAB CTE grant. The grant is a 3-phase process. The maximum monies that we could be awarded through the grant are $3 million. So we were approved for the phase 1 of 3 phases of the grant application process. We just found that out January 23rd. Really excited about that. They'll be submitting for the second phase of the grant process next week. We will find out in June whether or not they were approved for the second phase of the grant process. And then at that time, the third phase is go get in line for some money. There are no there's a lot of talk about how soon would you get your money if you did get approval. And so right now, CASH, which is a school organization, is actually doing a lot of advocacy with the state, trying to have them increase the amount of monies they sell in bonds so that they'll have more money that they can fund the grants with. So it's moving. It's kind of a moving target. With that, with the $400,000 bottom line, we have had some recent conversations within the district as far as what can we do sooner, because it could be like 2019, 2020 before we're able to build out things that are part of the grant monies. So we just have had like an initial conversation within the district management, trying to say what's realistic and what are things that we might be able to do that would be able to be still utilized for later development in the space. So, you know, if you have like a sound system or some electrical upgrades, but not wanting to do things that you're going to have to tear out later.
Right.
So that's the kind of brainstorming that we're having right now. And we expect to put together some ideas and then to reach out and meet with the site and put together some plans and see like what's realistic and what can we do sooner than later. So that's
Quick question on that. So if we do stuff in there now, if we get the grant, is what we do now, would that be considered part of the matching funds?
Yeah, and I have to give a big shout out, thank you to Lee, because he's been really helpful in the CTE grant. He helped in the initial planning with it, but also for this step 2 submittal, he's done a lot of work. And so as long as the stuff that we do was included as part of the grant application, it can count as our matching funds. And so all the things we've brainstormed about so far fall within that category, and we'll just be really careful as we walk through it to make sure that we're not doing stuff that wouldn't make sense.
I have a question. So in regards to the public comment that we have about using those grant funds for whether or not we could use them. So I was a little confused about that. I appreciate you bringing that up. I don't exactly know what it means in terms of what we're proposing to do or whether the monies could be used for that or not.
I feel like I probably would need our consultant to come talk about the granularity of it. It's kind of gets into shades of gray, but she is correct that the grant monies are for the CTE program specific, but the CTE program does not the only program that uses those spaces. So you can improve the space that's still going to accommodate the CTE program, but it doesn't mean that no other program could ever use that space. That's as it's been explained to me.
Okay. Yeah. But we'll look more into it. It's not, yeah, just to sort of figure that part out. And so, and it sounds like there's some areas that are a little bit, we're still working out to see what we're going to be allocating money towards or which projects. And I'm curious, I mean, every school in the district's important, of course. But as a parent and Mary Farmer, I know we have a lot of really old portables.
Yeah,
and we have a lot of spaces that aren't really usable. So I'm curious about that.
Perfect, good question. It's a great segue into page 2. So thank you. And also, I appreciate that question because in being sympathetic to all of the needs and causes that we have through our district, and just like our performing arts, of course, are very important. Mary Farmer is very important. And as we've gone through this process with trying to prioritize, you know, we have so many needs and there's more need than money and time. And so it's just trying to make people feel heard and that we care and we're sympathetic, but there's, you know, you got to like, how do you decide what goes first? And so that was part of that whole prioritization.
No, I know. And I know we
through.
don't have unlimited money and that we have to make decisions. And
yep.
But I'm curious about sort of how we're thinking about those priorities and
absolutely
because I think teaching learning spaces are
that's what we're about, right? So on page 2, these are projects that we discussed at the steering committee. The steering committee approved these projects on our January 11th meeting. And then if we're bringing them to the board and if the board is amenable, then we will move these projects from kind of this 3rd page list and they would be added to the right-hand column of your first page that to track underneath the approved projects in progress. So this process with the steering committee has been really difficult. And part of the conversation is that, okay, we're down to our last $7 to $10 million, depending on how much goes in the other allocations. But we also know we might have this Prop 51 money coming. And so 10 million might become 15 or 17, and then those decisions are much different and you would allocate more monies. And so there's been kind of like this horse in the cart thing going on in trying to figure out what to do. So what we came to, and that the committee approved, is that we need to make some allocations of some sort. We can't just stop and wait for Prop 51 grant determination, because every one of these projects, they take like a year by the time you go through DSA and all the stuff that you do. So what we talked about doing is, for Mary Farmer, they approved, and again, with board, if the board doesn't have any objections to it, then we'll go ahead and move this up. But an initial budget of $4 million for Mary Farmer, and we would look to start fairly soon to do planning for the entire campus. So we know that the entire campus improvements are going to cost much more than $4 million, but we're going to go through, we have like this master plan, but it's at a very high level. You got to work through the details and start getting into it to really be able to fully define things better. So we're going to do it for the entire campus, knowing we have an initial budget set of $4 million, and that's going to cost a lot more. But then we'll phase out, carve out phase one, say this is what we can do for $4 million, and this is what we will keep going on construction documents with. Then, should we find out we have additional monies with Prop 51, if we get awards for grants or whatever, we'll return to the steering committee. Of course, there's, it'll be up to them and up to you guys, because there's all school and everything, but there could be the possibility that everybody says, well, we're going to add phase two too. And so maybe that $4 million gets increased to, I hate to project because I don't want to set an expectation, but there's plenty of opportunity that we may be able to add more. But at least at this point, it gets us started in the planning so that we can go with something that we can start getting some improvements and working with the sites and, getting some excitement around that. So that's the first item on here. The second item is for security upgrades. And it's kind of the same thing. There's much more that could be done. We discussed pulling out $150,000, and now it's mostly for perimeter fencing improvements at all of the sites. And the third item is Joe Henderson bathroom facility for $200,000. So if we move these up to your right-hand column, and then that will have touched all of our priority one projects from our master plan, with the exception of Joe Henderson had improvements at the daycare building identified. And when we go back to the steering committee meeting next, we plan to bring that to them. So that would bring the unallocated monies that we currently have down to $2.6 million. But then again, so when we find out whether or not we get Prop 51, we would either say this is all we have and how do we want to distribute that between the remaining sites, or we have so much more and now we can do better. So.
At all a sense about the timing for Prop 51? I mean, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but I'm just curious.
Really good question. So I meant to segue into that, and there we are. So Prop 51, it's the same thing. It's a 3-step submittal process. It's submittal for each school, so it's actually 6 submittals at each step. We did the initial submittal to CDE, wrong acronym. We got our approval for that early in January for all of the sites, so that was super exciting. It's a different process than from CTE, because you have to bring documentation, because we're using existing projects that were built as our match money, so the district doesn't have to come out of pocket with anything. But it also means you have to do this amazing amount of documentation on all of those things that were already built. So anyhow, we've been making good progress on that. We expect to be submitting for the second submittal step, which is OPSC, within the next week. And then, so the CTE, they have like kind of strict setup diagrams, and they say June is when they'll make that decision. But these ones that are Prop 51, you just get in line. And so I'm pretty hopeful that we'll get a determination. I mean, I don't know, I would guess and say 2 or 3 months would be pretty reasonable, and hopefully before then. And then once they make the determination, we would know our grant amount, but we would have to get in a third line for funding, which could be out of ways. But if we knew we were getting the money, I think we could have a pretty good confidence level that we could start the planning, which takes a year or two anyhow. And plus we've got construction set up right now for summers 18, 19, and 20. And so when you start putting like, what can you do in a summer, we're out a little ways anyway. So those things, I think they're going to start coming together really well. Welcome.
So Roxanne, one more question. When we were having discussions at that committee meeting, and I will apologize for missing this past one, we also talked about exploring the idea of if there's any grants for the preschool, which was one of the reasons we were recommending postponing that. I don't know what kind of progress or what we have found out at all. So that was one. And the other one was we also talked about security of the facilities. It seems to me there had been another school incident at that time, and now we have one happening this time. So we felt it was real important that we get the perimeters of our schools secure. So I'm assuming that that discussion continued at the last meeting as well that you're bringing forward. Is that yes?
Yes, it did.
And
So
can I add on
please,
the security measures?
Please.
Next Thursday, Roxanne, myself, Alfredo, we're meeting with our insurance group is looking for a school or school district to partner with security measures at their school site. So they're coming next Thursday. I'm not quite sure if it's just planning type funding available versus hard construction funding contributions. So we are getting started with that next Thursday.
If I could just follow up, because I was wondering if we've ever had a professional security assessment done on our sites. You know, because from what I was reading, it seems like it's more than just fences and cameras. It's about minimizing large congregations of kids and the thinking of sites and making them safe is involved from hardening them to making them less attractive targets. And so, did we ever have any come in? And
we've had walks with our police department, and Solano Sheriff's Department has walked, and I believe Solano Sheriff's has mapped every one of our schools and given recommendations from there. They've done the digital maps. And on top of that, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know their expertise. I think while there's money, before we prioritize everything, I mean, education is our priority, obviously, but before that, we have to keep the kids safe. And so I'd hate to think that we could have done something, we ignored it.
Yeah, this the organization that our insurance group is working with, I do know that they are retired. I believe they're retired FBI or other type of government agencies, so we can bring their credentials back and share that with the board. So
and then it'd be worthwhile to have a formal assessment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's something we can't afford, but at least be asked the questions and say, of the sites we have, is it worth having a formal evaluation with recommendations? Some of them might not cost anything other than changing some procedures, but who knows? And we should take this stuff seriously, and it doesn't seem like it's stopping.
No, it doesn't, and I agree, and that was why the conversation came up the last time. And this is new information about teaming up with another district. I'd like to see what that's comprised of as well, but I do think we need to be serious about how we look at this and how we look to make sure that we maintain and protect our campuses. People are making a lot of bad choices, and I do not want Benicia to be one of their victims.
No, and things just like the most recent reports using the fire alarm system against
us.
Right, and so I do think we need some professional assistance beyond the local police department, and not to say anything against them. Maybe they've had the training. I know there's a national certification program.
Right.
Maybe they've attended that. It would just be good to know.
So you bring up the fire alarm system, and I was just at a DSA seminar this morning and discovered that DSA is changing the rules on fire alarm systems, and serendipitously it has happened at the same time that this incident happened with new fire alarm, the screen's gone down. With new fire alarm systems, you now no longer have to have the pull stations except one at the administration offices. So we can go back in and take out those extra. You have to get DSA's approval of it, of course.
They've
but
been taken out at the sites that we have that fire alarm upgrades at.
you can take out all except for one at the administration office, and that way you don't have that opportunity there. So one of the things you can do as you're going through and doing this is get rid of that particular problem. There are more problems that the site perimeter and security that you still need to deal with, and the idea, you know, as much as I as an architect can do about securing a perimeter, your point about having security experts talk with your staff and figure out ways of dealing with issues and monitoring is critical to making a safe school. It's not just, I can't solve it with architecture. It's a societal problem.
And a lot of it's also procedures and stuff, because Sandy Hook was one of the schools that supposedly had one of the nicest, greatest security, and the guy shot through the doors and went in and killed everybody.
Yes.
Or killed people. So you could think you've done everything, but you know, there's going to be workarounds. Or, you know, if someone bad enough. So we also need to have the response and procedures for all that.
Yeah, maybe some of it's setting our SROs to training. I mean, just what can we do? What's the? I hate to think that a bunch of people, you know, as well-meaning as we are, that saying in a room that we want to add some fencing we should feel safe for that. We're not experts, and we should.
And that's not what we were trained to do. I mean, that was never part of a training of an educator, is to know how to provide protection at that level should something happen. But I also thought it was real timely that we are looking at our safety plans right now and reading through them. And I wasn't real clear on them, and maybe you could share that when that time comes. But it's like, how often is our staff trained, and what does that really look like? So that, I don't know if you ever become comfortable, but you feel calm within yourself that you can make the decisions and take the measures that are needed in order to provide a level of security. And I'm looking at you guys going, I don't know if we ever get there, but I don't think a training once every other year or whatever that looks like, I've got to say, and today with the people around us, I'm not sure it's enough. And I think we need to talk about that.
Might need some thought partnership as to how do we address this with the students.
Right.
That they be willing to tell us when they see a problem. The most recent episode, you know, on social media, they saw this troubled person posing with firearms.
Right.
And no one said anything. Right. And so you can't go to public transportation anymore without placards, see something, say something. Do we need to begin that dialogue with our students? What is the downside of that? Because, you know, it's a shame that our high school students now know what an active shooter situation is. I mean, but there's a realism we have to confront, and how do we do it in the best possible way?
Appreciate that conversation.
Yeah, I think it's great. So I'll make a note of it, and so we have the 2.65 million remaining that's unallocated, and I think that if I'm understanding you correctly, before we make approvals or any decisions on that we get more information on this item and bring it into full considerations. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's very important to do. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any public comment on the Measure S bond update? Please make sure you give us your name.
Sure. Jojo Donetti, Benicia Community Tennis. Nice presentation on the middle school. One item glaring missing was the tennis courts, Mr. Architect. High school, I recall the gym floor was a phase 4 priority, yet it was implied with $47 million spent, you will have gotten through all of phase 1. So I ask for clarification on the bait and switch.
So is the question, well, I don't know how, what's legal in terms of how I can respond?
We need
We could ask staff to clarify that.
Right.
Right, we could have staff follow up on that. No, I think it's a good question.
Get a response back to us. I assume it means the Benicia High School Gym floor,
Yes, so that,
not BMS. Right. Okay, are there any other comments from the public? Okay, with that showing none, I am going to move on to 12.4, which is the report and discussion on enrollment and staffing discussions, and I believe that's going to be Mr. Rahill and Dr. Gill.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start, and Dr. Gill can chime in regards to projected staffing. So earlier in our board meetings in the year, we were hoping and projecting to get back to more stable times with enrollment, coming off of two straight years of declining enrollment, both years approaching 100 decline each year, not quite that much, but approaching that. We have stabilized a little bit, but it hasn't gone back to break even. So what we're seeing as our grades roll forward, just a continued slight decline. And we worked closely with our principals, and the secondary schools would be pretty stable, and they'd be pretty flat enrollment from this year to next year as we roll them forward. At the middle school always has a decline as we roll our students forward, but we also get other enrollments at the 6th grade level. Either students have gone to other schools for the elementary grades and come over to Benicia Middle School. That's a natural additional amount at the 6th grade level. But even with that, the middle school would be down by about 30 or 40 students. So what we did is we've talked with the principal at the middle school and working with the superintendent's office. We feel like we can monitor that very closely. And at this point, we were projecting stable enrollment. We would be open to consider some interdistrict agreements at the middle school, which for this year there were a few, but not many. And so that could help stabilize the enrollment at the middle school. At the elementary school, we are down 24 students for next year, and that is what we're projecting at this point in time. So overall, in our projections, we're moving forward with a reduction of 24 students, basically all at the elementary level. What happens when you roll the enrollment forward and you're down 24 students? They don't, all of the students don't come in at one grade level or at one school. So at this point, we're not able to reduce staffing related to those 24 students. But we will, again, we're going to monitor closely some of the less known grade levels like TK and K, and make sure that as those enrollments happen, that they're meeting or hopefully maybe exceeding what came in for the current year. And if we were to get an additional 24 students at the TK and K level, then that would flatten out the enrollment, and we'd have stable enrollment for next year. So we're going to monitor that closely, and at this point in time, we're going to have some slight declining enrollment for next year.
Can you just summarize? We're down a little bit right now in elementary is what we're thinking.
Yeah, our projection is we're going to be down 24 students next year.
Basically, at the middle school, you're looking at about 30.
We're not, at this point, we feel like the 6th graders that come into the middle school and some other perhaps interdistrict agreements would keep the middle school at flat.
So we have to accept probably more interdistrict agreements to keep them flat. And at the high school level?
High school, and at all of our secondary programs, it's rolled to be very stable. So flat at the high school.
And and we don't know, we're not going to know these numbers until school starts next year, right?
We will know for sure when they show up on the first day of school. We'll know a little bit ahead of time with the enrollments. Schools do some activities now to give us a good idea of students that may not be here. I believe they send out some sort of notices asking the families if they're going to return or not. There's some elective signups at the middle school that indicate students that will be coming next year. We continue to do our first Monday enrollment counts. So March, April, May, and that very last week in June, we will continue to count the kids and see if there is a, if we stabilize with our enrollment. Usually what happens is that students leave for one reason or another the last half of the school year. But if we can maintain that, that might mean that would give us some more information that would support stable enrollment for next year. So we'll just continue to monitor that each month.
And how long do we take interdistrict transfers for?
The application must be presented to the district that they're leaving by May 15th. So that gives us a good idea of how many we will have. I'm already accepting them and already have quite a large amount. And we'll continue to accept them till May 15th, and then they'll automatically be right after that. That is the board policy. Yes. Yes.
Whether it was unique to Benicia, and it looks like within the county, except for Fairfield, every district is seeing declining enrollment. And Fairfield probably be with Travis, but
Well, I was amazed when I was reading the article on Vallejo, how much their enrollment is down. I was kind of shocked. So I'm wondering if they're going to start getting tighter on the nose for the requests coming in.
So there are certain requests that must be approved, and those are students with documented safety issues.
Okay.
Students whose parents work in Benicia, those they have to approve. And that tends to be, that's what we're getting a lot of right away. And then there is an appeal process should Vallejo say no. And we have found that the appeal process usually goes in favor of the parent.
Okay, so clarify for us too, Betty, if a student is here on an interdistrict, say at the elementary level, they have to reapply or request to move to the middle, or are they ours until grade 12?
No. So Allen Bill transfers, which are those transfers that have applied under the Allen Bill, their parent works here.
Right.
They are now ours. They are as if they are a resident student. Their employment verifies their residency here in a weird way. All other transfer students have to reapply at the exit points, and that would be from 5th to 6th, and then from 8th to 9th.
Okay.
We do, however, review all transfer students that are not Allen Bill right now and send letters to those that are out of compliance, and then drop many of those after the second semester grades are posted.
We'll also be balancing our numbers at the elementary, especially if we have some grade levels that have too many students, so the ideas will be shifted to the other school. So that's something I will be working with Betty for every single school site, every single grade level, to shift that now as we accept new students. K and TK were our lowest grade levels, smallest grade levels last year. This current year, so those will be 2 grade levels we will be monitoring closely too, so we can have enough students to fill those classes.
I was noticing reading the safety plan, where you get to see the enrollment, to see some of the discrepancies. I thought was quite staggering.
Yeah, and I just want to, I was just going to go back to what Peter, you're talking about Solano County and declining enrollments. Well, across the state, I mean, there's some districts that have increasing, but the vast majority of the districts in the state are declining. So we're just part of a statewide trend.
People are leaving California.
We are in a kind of a unique position where over the many years we have our neighboring town who put in many transfers to come here. I know superintendents In other districts, they don't have that, and they just continue to go down, 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 and they don't have transfers that want to commit. So that is our advantage.
Is there any way to measure the loss we have with students, whether middle school or high school, moving on to private school? They've chosen to, how much we lose.
We don't have that as much as, yeah, maybe you do. But we do have, I do keep track of IDAs out of Benicia because I do process those as well.
Yeah, we started asking for monthly disenrollment reports that we're just sharing with the principals right now. And when a student disenrolls, the office manager has to put in a code, a reason why. And most of the time they say they're moving out of the area, they're going to a private school. So we started that mid-year this year so we can maybe report back at the end of the year what that looks like. And it also alerts the principal to kind of get some firsthand detailed information about their students and where they're going.
Any public comment on the topic of enrollment and staffing? Okay, seeing none, I am going to move on to the non-consent action items, which is the consideration and approval of the site and district safety plans that we have been discussing this evening. Yeah.
Dr. Patton to the podium, who's going to take us through a little walk through the plans, a quick summary of what's in there and the purpose and how we use them and what we go through every year to update them. So welcome.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So this is my first year of taking over the safety plan, so it's been a pleasure to review them for each of the sites. So basically, walking through the plans, there is a summary of the current situations at the school site, so it includes some of the demographics of the school, the disciplinary referrals, suspension rates, etc. And then the safety committee does a review of a whole list of things, the training, the procedures, some of the things that you've been discussing anecdotally on some of the other agenda items, such as is there only one point of entry? Is the perimeter fenced? And exit routes for the kids. It also includes our procedures around different disasters that may happen, both natural disasters, earthquakes, fires, things like that. And then also shooters on campus and the things that unfortunately as a society we've become all too aware of. So it's doesn't go unnoticed that we're talking about it tonight. Some of the highlights in the plan that we know as a district, we've done a lot of training on our shooter on campus drills. At the secondary, we do the trainings with the students, and we do them a minimum of once a year, and then they've done them a couple of times at the high school. It's in various levels, so some of them are just a procedural lockdown, making sure the students understand that. Some of them, they actually they work with the Benicia Police Department to block off, for example, Southampton and let the kids run off campus to actually experience that for the middle school. Yeah, kind of fun. And then we gather them all back up. So the kids, they've been wonderful with that. And I think it's good for the secondary students to experience that.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, ask questions.
Tabletop exercises so we do that for business resumption.
Yeah.
We pull in a group of people and they get in a room and then they're given a problem. Like there's been an earthquake. We've lost communication with this building and they're forced to think through the problem solving of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so
right.
There's a lot of preparation that goes into that, but the people in the room don't know what's coming at them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking about, events like when we had the Napa fires and having to send home kids and maybe we didn't really think through the mechanics of that. So putting scenarios where you put them into a difficult situation and make them on the fly say, well, if we don't have a procedure for that, what would we do? And then maybe we need a procedure. But like for an active shooter, has ever involved a tabletop exercise where the school administration and site personnel get together and, or maybe with our cooperation of the police department, given a scenario and say, what are we going to do?
So, okay, so let me, you've very great questions, and you've embedded quite a few things in there. That's okay, because I'm going to draw back on my military background and disaster preparedness. And so, yes, to some extent, we do. Could we do more? Absolutely. Absolutely. And so we do trainings kind of around the ALICE procedures with our staff. We will, and the way those trainings will work is we'll say, you have a shooter, it's just been announced, and it's between this building and this building, or it's just been announced. What would you do with your class? Where would your class go? Would that be a situation that you would hide, or you would fight if they're coming near, or you would run? Because you have to think about, depending on where that shooter is, sometimes you would hide and then fight if they enter your room. Other times, depending on where the shooter is, you're going to take your class and you're going to bolt out off campus and get away. So yes, we could do more. One of the things that we did in my previous district, and we've been talking about doing here, is actual drills with the fire department and the police department that are the staff doesn't know what's going to happen necessarily. They know a drill is going to happen, but you walk up and you hand the principal, here's your package of scenarios, go for it. So they have to think on the spot. So,
I was thinking when Lee was talking about changing the access at the middle school, if a scenario is there's an active shooter, but all the gates are locked.
Yeah. So
whose job is it to make sure that?
Right. So so that is something that's in the safety plans right now, and that's a very big concern of the high school staff, particularly, and myself. And I talked to Alfredo about this quite a bit in preparing for tonight. At the high school, our gates are chain locked. There's not the pressure. And so they are part of the, that's in their safety plan to continue to address that. Also, the access points from the back part of the high school, and particularly now with the stadium and relooking at the fencing. So that's all in their safety plan, and it's also part of what Roxanne and Alfredo are working on together. So that part of the facilities and safety we have to look at. That's in their plans. They address that in their plans, but they also need the support of the district staff and obviously maintenance to work on those things. The other thing that's in the plans is also the things we're doing around the social emotional wellness for kids. And you take a look at all of these different scenarios that have been happening, and there are red flags almost all the time with the shooter. And so what are we doing to reach out to the students that we're concerned about? What are we doing around school culture in general so that we don't have a student that feels ostracized, that is bullied, and all of the different situations that we hear about in the news? So I think we've made some progress. Are we perfect? No. There's always room for growth in that area. But part of the Safe School Committee is to look at those things and kind of do a self-rating on what's happening at their site. What are the interventions they have? What can they do more of in the future? The last piece that you mentioned, Mr. Morgan, is the release, the controlled release. And we that's one of the goals. We've talked about that at Admin Council, is to work on, for each individual school, what is the plan. So you have, when you have a controlled release, it's a release that you are planning ahead of time. You're asking the parents to come and pick up their children. It's not that we've had like this huge shooting and everybody's kind of in that mode. That certainly is a release also. But this is like the situation with the fires, or the if there was a shelter in place because of Valero or something like that, where we're asking the parents to come pick up their children. And we need to do some more communication with our families and on how that's going to happen, and then also how do we account for our children and making sure that they all get picked up by the right adults. And particularly at the high school, it's a challenge because many of our students drive, and many of our students drive their friends. And so if they're getting to and from school that way on a daily basis, then we have to ensure that if we're releasing them, we don't always know who they have permission to ride with. They do that on their own. But we can't just release them to drive with a friend. So so we're working on those scenarios. We're working with the school sites, and that's something we've talked about at Admin Council, and they are working on drafting very specific plans for each of their sites on how to do those releases.
Communicate that with the parents. I
Yeah.
know with
Yes.
Sonoma fires with social media, it was getting out pretty early that, that the school was going to dismiss, and parents were going to the schools and pulling their kids out while the district was trying to figure out the process, releasing them, and it was chaos.
Yeah, and students having cell phones is kind of a double-edged sword. It's great because they can communicate with their parents and their parents feel secure and they feel secure, but at the same time, some of that communication gets ahead of us as a district because, 1,200 students are contacting their parent, and so then, 1,200 parents may show up at the same time. So we'll continue to work on that and look at other models for other schools on how they release. And again, as Dr. Young mentioned earlier, we continue to work with the Vacaville, sorry, I'm living in Vacaville, with the Benicia PD on procedures. They did show up at our campuses today just to have the students get a sense of security, and that was on their own. We didn't ask them to do that, but they, the police chief felt like that was important. So if you have other specific questions, I can address them about the plans.
Carolyn, I had a question when I was reading the plans too. Is a couple of the sites were marking that they didn't feel there was enough security cameras, and we just went through that with the bond and put security cameras on here. So can you tell us what that concern looks like? Also, I just lost what I was going to ask you. There was another question that I'll come back to me, but talk about that one first.
Yeah, so so I will reach out to those sites. So in a couple of those cases, there are some, I guess we call them black spots, where there's places where the cameras can't see. And so do we need to put an additional camera? Okay. For example, Benicia Middle School has one particular, and it happens to be a tight spot where there's a kind of students are having to get squished in, and so they tend to get not a lot of referrals, but kids will come and say, I got pushed there or something like that, and because they can't see it on camera, that's harder to validate, because did they really get pushed, or was it that people were moving in too cramped of a quarters? So so it's a little bit harder to investigate those allegations in that particular spot. So I think that's one of them that was referenced. I don't remember all of them, but I can go back and specifically
Okay, no,
look at that.
that's fair. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. And I think the other one too, that I saw, I think at least 2 sites were saying that they didn't feel comfortable, well trained enough. So I just think we need to go back and whether it's going through scenarios again, whether it's having the police department kind of support and go through scenarios again, I just think it's not a bad idea, and it would behoove us to kind of make sure we sharpen our skills here.
Right. Yep. I agree. So we need to do the trainings not only for the active shooters, but we also need to do trainings for just other natural disasters and other things that may happen on our campuses. We did talk last year at Admin Council about having a list of mandatory drills that they would do with students, and then the things that they will do just with staff, because some of them just need to happen with staff. So I will work with Dr. Young and Mr. Rahill and see what kind of training we can bring in and what kind of training we can do internally.
I think that would be great. Those are emergency times. They're technically unstructured times, and I think the more we practice, the more comfortable we are, whether it's a fire drill or anything, but that should be something that we have in our comfort zone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
One thing I and I may have missed it, but especially in the high school, but even in the middle school, assessment of the change in California law and decisions of the city council to allow marijuana, and what we need to do to, up our game, inform students that it's still illegal to have on campus, the risk of edibles. We need to change our policies on food, or do we need to ask the police department to bring drug sniffing dogs periodically, just to show a presence, the way that when you go to like today, I was at the airport and they changed the procedure on TSA, so you had to walk past a bomb sniffing dog, everybody, no matter if you had free or not, just to be disruptive, right? And so, and I think that, not that we're trying to catch anybody, because we don't want them to do it, but make them think. And so our plans should be updated to reflect a new risk, in that this is going to be potentially in the community.
Right. Yeah.
I know we've talked about dogs before.
Mm-hmm.
Police department can no longer train their dogs for sniffing marijuana because it is now legal in California. But there's private agencies out there that has dogs that has that capability. You know, and all the schools are drug-free zones, and we need to just remind our students of that. And
we might be able to get you know, the training exercise, the Coast Guard or military to come over and do it once a year, but just to show as a sign that don't take the risk of getting caught, because
I believe all of our band students before they went to New Orleans,
Correct.
they dropped their luggage off, they were tagged, they were put in a secure area, the dogs went through.
There was just an article, I forget, it was one of the big cities, San Francisco or LA, of a school and 20 kids got sick, sent to the hospital because of edibles.
Yeah, and we've had that happen, not 20 kids on our campus, but we've had kids consume edibles that have been brought by other students, and of course we take that.
I guess my thought is, I mean, I understand the concerns, but I don't think it's a new issue. I don't think just because it's legal in California it's going to start happening. I think it's already an issue, and like my concern and I guess where I would like to put our energy is in towards services to help support the kids that are struggling, and sort of what you know, I mean, not to say that that's a bad idea,
No,
but I think
we're talking the concept of safety tonight, and so I agree
but
with
it is
you that
safety because it is safety because, like, you know, we can bring some dogs and sometimes sniff out some people, but the reality is that, you know, the reason people do drugs and you know, what we, you know, around social emotional health, and I mean, so many factors we can't control in a school district and we can't fix either. But you know, I think the conversation also needs to include that when we're talking about drug use.
Just a reminder of that, when we did our resolution, I had lunch with the city councilman, Mark Hughes. We meet once a month, and we talked about that. There's ironing out the resolution where they want to have the dispensaries, et cetera. But I asked him about that part of it, that any of those revenues could potentially come to the district to help us with prevention and counseling. And that's a part that they would still have to work through. But I'm glad.
Revenues yet, because they have to get a vote for a tax increase,
right?
While we're still struggling with the issue.
But we can do things before we wait for them, and we can do it.
I agree with on the counseling. I think there's a benefit to showing deterrence in the exercise of bad judgment.
Right.
It's not drug related or needing counseling. It's just people, as we've seen in our own district, employees exercising bad judgment, and a deterrent effect may make people think twice.
I think it's both.
I think it's both.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a balance, because I agree with you. Know,
just a punitive approach doesn't really work.
Right.
I mean, expelling our kids isn't necessarily helpful. Like, I think.
And our high school principal has reported out, even when we went to the city council meetings, the issue that's on the rise at the high school is the edibles. And I think that is something that we shouldn't ignore, we should address, which brings me to my other question, and it was the mental health. We are going to get to a point where we are only going to be able to provide so much for the sake of what we can afford to provide. Mm-hmm. I mean, at some point, I think we as a district need to start talking about the fact of partnering, whether it's with county mental health, whether it's with Kaiser, but I mean, there has to be, and I don't even know if that's appropriate, but the idea is that we need to partner in order to be able to gain the support for our students that we need to have. And a lot of times, the fact that they're using marijuana or they're using drugs, I mean, those are the red flags. Mm-hmm. And we need to have the resources in hand to meet those needs. So I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if that's a reasonable thing, but I know we're going to max out shortly. We can only bring so many more people into the campus. Mm-hmm. And I think the way to gain us more strength and power in a lot of our areas is to start partnering.
So I can certainly bring back, we have a couple of partnerships already for mental health services, and I can bring those back to the board or put them in a board report for you. So we currently partner with New Pathways. We currently have some limited partnerships with Solano County Mental Health for students that are Medi-Cal eligible, and we allow them to do the counseling on our campuses, which sometimes transportation to Vallejo, which is the closest clinic, is a barrier for our students to access their counseling, so we provide the office space. We just at our last wellness meeting had a presentation that I will be bringing back to admin council and cabinet from John Muir and John Garamendi's office to partner with us for a variety of community service items, but one of them that they offer is mental health, MFTs, and so we're looking at partnering with them for our students that are not attending school, either because of school phobia or some sort of short-term or long-term bullying situation, helping us to run some groups around that. We can certainly talk to them about some substance abuse groups. We don't, when we've had substance abuse counseling in the past, we haven't had a lot of students take part in it, and part of it is the denial stage, and so we would have to look at, are we making that we do make it mandatory if they're expelled for drug sales or something like that, but is that a mandatory or a restorative practice type of thing if they end up high on campus? So so those are some good discussions we can have. Trustee Monet, there is a part in the safety plans, I think you've seen it, that talks about the counseling and mental health piece. So I think that does fit in our conversation tonight, because we know that even as we alluded to tonight, you can put barriers, you can put walls. I mean, I was in a walled city in Berlin, and you know, there's still people can get inside, and so we have to look at the mental health components of our kids and our staff, because to the extent that we address that, then we protect ourselves. The last thing I'll say is about that is we do see something, say something campaigns on a regular basis, and then there was just 2 weeks ago, and there was the Start With Hello campaign, and they did some activities at both BMS and BHS around just Start With Hello, which is an initiative that was started by one of the moms that lost their child at Sandy Hook, and reaching out to those students or staff that seem to be isolated and not having friends. So, yeah.
Inform the district of a concern anonymously without.
Yeah, so there's definitely a few ways. They can do a referral with our online referral and just not say who they are when they do that. And that would just go straight to counseling, and then we would hope that when they do that, there's a way to say this is an emergency type of thing.
We publish that.
Yeah, it goes out, and I can have the sites put it back out again. We've talked about having kind of a tip box. Or there also are tip lines, which we have the tip line posters. That doesn't come to us as a district, but it goes to, with our insurance group, there's a tip process. And then there's a way that they collect that information and get it back to us. And then, of course, you can pick up the phone and just say, I don't want to identify myself, and call one of the schools or the district office, and we would certainly take that seriously. And we actually have had that happen about, not a shooter, but a couple of things that were concerning to us that we've investigated.
It's great to communicate that way, not punitive, but if you really want to help somebody, and so that they won't feel like these are going to show up. There's somebody there to help.
Yeah. Yeah, and then just for the public's knowledge, the safety plans are not publicized, so they're not linked on our website. That's for the safety of our students. And so if anybody wants to view them, they have the right to either, if it's a specific school, just go to your school site and ask the office manager or principal that you'd like to see the safety plan. If you'd like to see all of them or the district plan, you can come up and see Ms. Jensen in the superintendent's office, and we can give you access to look at that. You won't be able to take a copy with you, but you can review it up here.
I got one more question. AEDs? Do all school sites have AEDs?
Yes, they do, and the school sites, part of their safety plan is to review whether they've done training, and Terry oversees that and makes sure that they you know, have the correct inspections and.
Yeah, because some of the binders said where they were, and another one referring to the district office, not the school site. Like,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll have to, I saw that too. I'll have Terry follow up on that with the.
In fact, during our professional development day, that was one of the sessions that Terry was offering, is providing CPR and AE trainings to staff.
One last question.
Yep, no problem.
They all address bullying,
Mhm.
cyberbullying, bullying. Do we keep metrics on that data that we can track?
So, so if there is a complaint about bullying, it's supposed to be addressed by the site administrators. And so what we've asked them to do is in the log entry to use that specific word bullying. I cannot guarantee that we're completely consistent on that. We do not keep anything up here at the district office, and that would be another thing if we, if it rises to a uniform complaint, we do, but not if it's just something that's handled at the school site.
Personally, I think that would be a really useful thing to track, especially in some of the materials that Dr. Beetson presents to us periodically on the health of the district.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
It should be in their system, right, so that it could be easily pulled. It's not necessarily that we've had it before, but we should be able to, well, the district office personnel should be able to pull that data if we really wanted to see it and have a conversation about it.
I would like to see it and have a conversation about it.
So I know that I asked Mr. Wall last year. I don't remember if it was one of the elementary schools or Benicia Middle School to do a search for the word bully or bullying in all log entries and print all of those for me. It wasn't so clean that I could just sit there and count, because sometimes, you know, the word was used with multiple kids, so it wasn't like a one-to-one correspondence. So if we're going to want to keep data on that, which we certainly can do, we'll have to create. It won't be as easy as just going into the log entries in PowerSchool. It's just not that searchable. So we'll need to create a system for that. So.
I think it would just be helpful, especially if we want to look at the effectiveness of PBIS and what we can do intervention-wise in the district to address the issue.
And since you mentioned PBIS, the Swiss system might be the place that would be the easiest to keep that, because we're already keeping that. That's that school-wide information system for referrals.
Yeah.
That would probably be the best place to house it. So I'll work with Jen Baker and see if that's something we can do.
I think it's important to know how effective what we're doing is, and what if we need to make changes, or you know, modify our approaches.
And the thing I was, and as you were going to dig into it, so it might be worth doing it. The term bullying in our books, like in our board policy, includes sexual harassment, and I think that might need to be.
Right, we might want to separate out the sexual harassment. Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions? So, all right. Thank you.
I would like to move that we approve the site and district safety plans. Oh, sure. I thought we already did all that.
We didn't do that. Do I have any comments from the public on our site?
Sure.
Yeah, I got you for a change. Please state your name when.
Hello, I'm Melissa Phillips, and my question was sort of once you guys have the site plans and there's recommendations for upgrades that are not on your current list, which is a separate thing, is there budget to fix them? I'm specifically talking an earthquake. We got buildings that will fall on our kids' heads. I'm at Mary Farmer, sorry. We have an active shooter. We're right next to the high school. There's a pathway down between the high school out to the new field. Kids can walk right by. If the only visibility from that side from the staff inside the school is if Deb is in her office or the principal. If they weren't and the kid wanted to hit that first, all of our kids' classes on the front, 3 classes, all glass windows. Person doesn't even have to enter the building to take out a whole bunch of people on their way to wherever they're headed. So it seemed like, you know, just even a brick wall in front of it eliminates that risk, and not a huge cost because we're not set for any upgrades for 2 or more years, if I understood that. So I just want to know, is there a process for getting that taken care of before the next 2 or 3 years? So that's my question.
I think, Dr. Young, that was sort of line of question I was having is, before we spend the rest of the bond money, can we do a security assessment?
Yes, I'll work with staff on that.
Are there any other comments? Mary? Hello.
Several years ago, I mentioned that you talked about having dogs go through the high school. Even though marijuana is legal, I don't believe it's legal for children or anyone under 21.
Under 21.
Or
21.
18. 20.
No one at school, regardless. That's a penal code.
So in my nephew's school, they have this thing where when you register, you can also apply for a drug test, a random drug test. So that's just a threat to them. So you pay like $35 a parent, and the kid knows that he can be pulled randomly throughout the year. Maybe he never got pulled through for that year, but it's just a little deterrent for them to know that their parents had already paid the money and they could be checked at any time. Okay.
Okay, then I am going to move forward and call for a motion from the board. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?